Just because I'm worried about my mic being too quiet. I believe we're on chapter 3. I was trying to set everything up beforehand. We are on chapter 3. I'm so smart. I remembered. Anyway. Hi. Hello. I'm alive. I'm here. I exist. Crazy to think about, actually. Okay, here we go. Oh, now I have to move it over, because... Okay. There we go. Take that off of studio mode. But anyway, hello. He's alive. I'm alive. I exist. I'm alive and I'm real and I'm true. Not my BGM getting copyrighted. That was oh shit. I will send you the place I get my BGM from, the site that I use. Or the Ko-fi shop that I use, I guess. That's crazy, actually. It may have been royalty free, but sometimes Twitch is a fucking beast of its own. Oh shit. I opened up so many things. Ooh. There it is. I see. I knew it would be there. I'm so smart. I have certain things organized a certain way. There is... I'll just send you... There we go. Here it is. I have it now. Has to load, though. Yeah, okay. There you go. Aw, why didn't it do its thing? Hold on. Excuse me. You should just be able to copy and paste it anyway. It's not a big deal. Anyway, yeah, you can get BGM there. I'm also responding to people. Oh my goodness gracious. I'm gonna be so distracted. Guys, my ADHD is crazy. Anyway. I can close that now before I get too distracted. Holy shit. You got this, bud. Hanging by a thread, my man. Hanging by a thread. Alright. Whoa. Oh, why is this ear so sensitive? I've had this earbud in all morning in that ear, though. So, to be fair... No! Stop it connecting. Charge. Thank you. I guess a little update. I know I've been, like, not streaming relatively consistently the past couple weeks. And that was not the intention. I had full intentions to stream. However, when my brain sparked and a lot of my dissociative fog went away, I've been attempting to keep into a consistent schedule, and I just hadn't implicated streaming back into that yet. So, One step at a time, slowly but surely. Uh, slowly but surely. Just because I like streaming, but I also like the feeling of getting my shit together and feeding my brain knowledge. A whole thing. A whole fucking thing. Anyway, the last time we read The Hobbit, we read chapter 2, and it was the gathering party coming across the three mountain trolls, and then when they get picked up and essentially almost prepped to be cooked, that's when Gandalf comes from up on the hill, up on the cliff above the group, and cracks a rock in order for the sun to hit the mountain trolls because they turn to stone in the sun. And that's about where we left off at. After they, find the cave that the trolls were originally, that they came from, and find all the loot, bury all the money somewhere else, shit like that. Needless to say, it did not go as smoothly as any of the dwarves hoped. But chapter 3 is called A Short Rest. I will try my best to keep information about what book we're reading up on the screen. This will probably be our default background for study streams or book club streams, because this is kind of what this is. This is the book club thing I talked about in my debut that I wanted to do, was reading books on streams and then talking about the book after we finish it. So slowly but surely we're getting into these things, right? Chapter 3 is called A Short Rest. Now we'll get right into reading. It's just your library. It's your background. I mean, yeah, absolutely. This is totally not the New York City Public Library. This is totally mine. Yep. They did not sing or tell stories that day, even though the weather improved, nor the next day, nor the day after. They had begun to feel that danger was not far away on either side. They camped under the stars, and their horses had more to eat than they had, for there were plenty of grass, but there was not much in their bags, even with what they had got from the trolls. One morning they forded a river at a wide, shallow place full of the noise of stones and foam. The far bank was steep and slippery. When they got to the top of it, leading their ponies, they saw the great mountains had marched down very near to them. Already they seemed only a day's easy journey from the feet of the nearest. Dark and drear it looked, though there were patches of sunlight on its brown sides, and behind its shoulders at the tips of snow peaks gleamed. "Is that the mountain?" asked Bilbo in a solemn voice, looking at it with round eyes. He had never seen a thing that looked so big before. "Of course not," said Balin. "That is only the beginning of the Misty Mountains, and we have to get through, or over, or under those, somehow, before we can come to Wilderland beyond. And it is a deal of a way even from the other side of them to the lonely mountains in the east, where Smaug lies on our treasure." "Oh," said Bilbo, and just at that moment he felt more tired than he ever remembered feeling before. Me too, Bilbo. Me fucking too, brother. He was thinking once again of his comfortable chair before the fire, in his favorite sitting room in his hobbit hole, and of a kettle singing. Not for the last time. Now Gandalf led the way. "We must not miss the road, or we shall be done for," he said. "We need food, for one thing, and rest in reasonable safety. Also, it is very necessary to tackle the Misty Mountains by the proper path, or else you will get lost in them and have to come back and start at the beginning again if you ever get back at all." They asked him where he was making for, and he answered, You are come to the very edge of the wild. As some of you may know, hidden somewhere ahead of us is the fair valley of Rivendell where Elrond lives in the last homely house. I sent a message by my friends, and we are expected." AKA, he told the elves, hey, we need food and shelter just to be safe and well rested to get where we need to go, because he's buddy-buddy with the elves. Elves and dwarves in Middle-earth do not get along, by the way. There's a lot of beef there. That sounded nice and comforting, but they had not got there yet, and it was not as so easy as it sounds to find the last homely house west of the mountains. There seemed to be no trees and no valleys and no hills to break the ground in front of them, only one vast slope going slowly up and up to meet the feet of the nearest mountain, a wide land the color of heather and crumbling rock, with patches and slashes of grass green and moss green showing where water might be. Morning passed, afternoon came. But in all the silent waste there was no sign of any dwelling. They were growing anxious, for they saw now that the house might be hidden almost anywhere between them and the mountains. They came on unexpected valleys, narrow with steep sides that opened suddenly at their feet, and they looked down surprised to see trees below them and running water at the bottom. There were gullies that they could almost leap over, but very deep with waterfalls in them. There were dark ravines that one could neither jump nor climb into. There were bogs, some of them green and pleasant places to look at, with flowers growing bright and tall, but a pony that walked there with a pack on its back would have never come out again. It was indeed a much wider land from the ford to the mountains than ever you would have guessed. Bilbo was astonished. The only path was marked with white stones, some of which were small, and others were half covered with moss or heather. Altogether, it was a very slow business following the track, even guided by Gandalf, who seemed to know his way about pretty well. His head and beard wagged this way and that as he looked for stones, and they followed his lead, but they seemed no nearer to the end of the search when the day began to fail. Tea time had long gone by, and it seemed supper time would soon do the same. There were moths fluttering about, and the light became very dim, for the moon had not risen. Bilbo's pony began to stumble over roots and stones. Roots and stones, why did I say it like that? Roots. They came to the edge of the steep fall in the ground so suddenly that Gandalf's horse nearly slipped down the slope. "Here it is at last," he called out, and the others gathered round him and looked over the edge. They saw a valley far below. They could not hear the voice of hurrying water in a rocky bed at the bottom. The scent of trees was in the air, and there was a light on the valley side across the river. Bilbo never forgot the way they slithered and slipped in the dusk down the steep zigzag path into the secret valley of Rivendell. The air grew warmer as they got lower, and the smell of the pine trees made him drowsy, so that every now and again he nodded and nearly fell off or bumped his nose on the pony's neck. Their spirits rose as they went down and down. The trees changed to beech and oak, and there was a comfortable feeling in the twilight. The last green had almost faded out of the grass when they came at length to an open glade not far above the banks of the stream. It smells like elves, thought Bilbo, and he looked up at the stars. They were burning bright and blue. Just then there came a burst of song like laughter in the trees. "Oh, what are you doing and where are you going? Your ponies need shoeing. The river is flowing here down in the valley. Oh, what are you seeking and where are you making?" Okay, there's a word in this book, and although I am a gay boy, it means a very different thing in this time period, because this book came out in, I believe, if I remember correctly, this book came out in like 1930 something. "1937, I was right." So, ultimately, the song is findable if you just look up the the Song of Rivendell from The Hobbit. You'd be able to find the lyrics for it, but it's essentially the elves acknowledging that the dwarves and this wizard and the Hobbit all need help, and they start calling their names directly. Like, they know these people by name. Will you be staying or will you be flying? Your ponies are straying, the daylight is dying. To fly would be folly, to stay would be jolly, and listen and hark till the end of the dark to our tune. So it's essentially inviting them in. The elves are attempting to invite them in. So they laughed and sang in the trees, and pretty fair nonsense, I dare say you think it. Not that they would care, they would only laugh all the more if you told them so. They were elves, of course. Soon, Bilbo caught glimpses of them as the dark deepened. He loved elves, though he seldom met them, but he was a little frightened of them too. Dwarves don't get on well with them. Even decent enough dwarves like Thorin and his friends think them foolish, which is a very foolish thing to think, or get annoyed with them. For some elves tease them and laugh at them, and most of all, at their beards. Well, well, said a voice, just look! Bilbo the Hobbit on a pony, my dear, isn't it delicious? Most astonishing, wonderful. Then, off they went into another song as ridiculous as the one I have written down in full. At last, one, a tall young fellow, came out from the trees and bowed to Gandalf and to Thorin. Welcome to the valley, he said. Thank you, said Thorin a bit gruffly, but Gandalf was already off his horse and among the elves, talking merrily with them. You are a little out of your way, said the elf. That is, if you are making for the only path across the water and to the house beyond. We will set you right, but you had best get on foot while you are over the bridge, until you are over the bridge. Are you going to stay a bit and sing with us, or will you get straight on? Supper is preparing over there, he said. I can smell the wood fires for the cooking. Tired as he was, Bilbo would have liked to stay a while. Elvish singing is not a thing to miss in June under the stars, not if you care for such things. Also, he would have liked to have a few private words with these people that seemed to know his names and all about him, although he had never seen them before. He thought their opinion of his adventure might be interesting. Elves know a lot and are wondrous folk for news, and know what is going on among the peoples of the land as quick as water flows, or quicker. But the dwarves were all for supper as soon as possible, just then, and would not stay. On they all went, leading their ponies, till they were brought to a good path, and so at last to the very brink of the river. It was flowing fast and noisily, as mountain streams do of a summer evening, when the sun has been all day on the snow far up above. There was only a narrow bridge of stone without a parapet, as narrow as a pony could well walk on, and over that they had to go, slow and careful, one by one, each leading his pony to the bridle, by the bridle. The elves had brought bright lanterns to the shore, and they sang a merry song as the party went across. Don't dip your beard in the foam, father, they cried to Thorin, who was bent almost on his hands and knees. It is long enough without you watering it. Mind, Bilbo doesn't eat all the cakes, they called. He is too fat to get through the keyholes yet. Hush, hush, good people, and good night, said Gandalf, who came last. Valleys have ears, and some elves have over-merry tongues. Good night. And so at last they all came to the last homely house, and found its doors flung wide. Oh, my nose itches, bro. Crazy. What do you mean it's already almost been 30 minutes? That's bullshit. Anyways. Now, it is a strange thing, but things that are good to have and days that are good to spend are soon told about, and not much to listen to. While things that are uncomfortable, palpitating, and even gruesome may make a good tale, and take a deal of telling anyway. They stayed long in that good house, 14 days at least, and they found it hard to leave. Bilbo would gladly have stopped there forever and ever, even supposing a wish would have taken him right back to his hobbit hole without trouble. Yet there is little to tell about their stay. The master of the house was an elf friend, one of those people whose fathers came into the strange stories before the beginnings of history, the wars of evil goblins and the elves and the first men in the north. In those days of our tale, there were still some people who had both elves and heroes of the north for ancestors, and Elrond, the master of the house, was their chief. He was a noble, and as fair in face as an elf lord, as strong as a warrior, as wise as a wizard, as venerable as a king of dwarves, and as kind as summer. He comes into many tales, but his part in the story of Bilbo's great adventure is only a small one, though important, as you will see, if we ever get to the end of it. His house was perfect. Whether you liked food or sleep or work or storytelling or singing or just sitting and thinking best or a pleasant mixture of them all, evil things did not come into that valley. I wish I had time to tell you even a few of the tales or one or two of the songs that they heard in that house. All of them, the ponies as well, grew refreshed and strong in a few days there. Their clothes were mended as well as their bruises, their tempers, and their hopes. Their bags were filled with food and provisions light to carry but strong to bring them over the mountain passes. Their plans were improved with the best advice. So the time came to Midsummer Eve, and they were to go on again with the early sun on midsummer morning. Elrond knew about the runes of every kind. That day he looked at the swords they had brought from the troll's lair, and he said, "These are not troll make. They are old swords, very old swords of the high elves of the west, my kin. They were made in Gondolin for the goblin wars. They must have come from a dragon's horde or a goblin plunder, for dragons and goblins destroyed that city many ages ago. This, Thorin, the rune's name, Orcrist, the goblin cleaver in the ancient tongue of Gondolin. It was a famous blade. This, Gandalf, is Glamdring, foe hammer, that the king of Gondolin once wore. Keep them well." "Whence did the trolls get them, I wonder?" said Thorin, looking at his sword with new interest. "I could not say," said Elrond. "But one may guess that your trolls had plundered other plunders, or come on the remnants of old robberies in some hold in the mountains. I have heard that there are still forgotten treasures of old to be found in the deserted caverns of the mines of Moria, since the dwarf and goblin war." Thorin pondered these words. "I will keep the sword in honor," he said. "May it soon cleave goblins once again." "A wish that is likely to be granted soon enough in the mountains," said Elrond. "But show me your map." He took it and gazed long at it and shook his head, for if he did not altogether approve of dwarves and their love of gold, he hated dragons and their cruel wickedness, and he grieved to remember the ruin of the town of Dale and its merry bells, and the burned banks of the bright river running. The moon was shining in a broad silver crescent. He held up the map, and the white light shone through it. "What is this?" he said. "There are moon letters here, beside the plain runes, which say 5 feet high the door, and 3 may walk abreast." "What are moon letters?" asked the hobbit, full of excitement. He loved maps, and I have told you before, and he also liked runes and letters and cunning handwriting, though when he wrote it himself, it was a bit thin and spidery. Spidery. Oh, why does my nose itch so much? Crazy. "Moon letters are rune letters, but you cannot see them," said Elrond. "Not when you look straight at them. They can only be seen when the moon shines behind them, and what is more, with the more cunning sort, it may be a moon of the same shape and season as the day when they were written. The dwarves invented them and wrote them with silver pens, as your friends could tell you. These must have been written on a midsummer's eve in a crescent moon, not in a crescent moon a long while ago." So, for example, the runes you see on this thingy here on the side, these are the regular runes. Now, the moon letters would be underneath this, written in basically like an invisible ink that they can only see under the light of a specific moon. So that's where the moon letters would be under the normal runes over here. Just for reference. What do they say? Asked Gandalf and Thorin together, a bit vexed, perhaps, that even Elrond should have found this out first, though, really, there had not been a chance before, and there would not have been another until goodness knows when. Stand by the grey stone when the thrush knocks, read Elrond, and the setting sun, with the last light of Durin's day, will shine upon the keyhole. Durin, said Thorin. He was the father of the fathers of the eldest race of dwarves, the Longbeards, and my first ancestor. I am his heir. Then what is Durin's day? Asked Elrond. The first day of the dwarves' new year, said Thorin. Is as all, what the fuck? My brain did not process those 3 words. Is as all should know the first day of the last moon of autumn on the threshold of winter. So the equinox, I guess, between seasons. Basically. We still call it Durin's Day when the last moon of autumn and the sun are in the sky together. But this will not help us much, I fear, for it passes our skill in these days to guess when such a time will come again. That remains to be seen, said Gandalf. Is there any more writing? None to be seen by this moon, said Elrond, and he gave the map back to Thorin. And then, when they went down to the water to see the elves dance and sing upon the midsummer's eve, the next morning was a midsummer's morning as fair and fresh as could be dreamed. Blue sky and never a cloud, and the sun danced on the water. Now they rode away amid songs of farewell and good speed, with their hearts ready for more adventures, and with a knowledge of the road they must follow over the misty mountains to the land beyond. And that's the end of chapter 3, which is crazy. That was only 30 minutes. Usually these chapters take an hour. I think that chapter was shorter. That's wild. Okay, first of all, I want to process that chapter because they just sat there in Rivendell for a while. And my nose also itches like a motherfucker. Ugh. Awful. Awful things. Crazy. Oh, I'm losing circulation in my foot. No, stop it. Stop it. Alright. Now, I'm gonna be so real. I probably would also want to stay in Rivendell with the dwarves. In theory, I could also read chapter 4. Mayhaps. Potentially. Which is an option. It's only 12 pages. think I'm just gonna go ahead and read chapter 4. Yep. So I'll update the tingy. Oh, the titles for these chapters just keep getting longer. We'll put it up here then. It'll be easier that way. Alright. So now we're gonna read chapter 4. Over Hill and Under Hill. To readjust my sitting position. This is also going to count as my daily read, because I haven't read my article yet today. I might still read it, but as of right now, I've not read one. Chapter 4. Over Hill and Under Hill. There were many paths that led up into those mountains, and many passes over them. But most of the paths were cheats and deceptions and led nowhere or to bad ends, and most of the passes were infested by evil things and dreadful dangers. The dwarves and the Hobbit, helped by the wise advice of Elrond and the knowledge and memory of Gandalf, took the right road to the right pass. Long days after they had climbed out of the valley and left the last homely house miles behind, they were still going up and up and up. It was a hard path and a dangerous path, a crooked way and a lonely and a long. The phrasing of things back in 1937 is strange. Oh! Because it's literally what it says. Oh, I lost my place. There. They were still going up and up and up. It was a hard path and a dangerous path, a crooked way and a lonely and a long. Now they could look back over the lands they had left, laid out behind them far below. Far, far away in the west, where things were blue and faint, Bilbo knew there lay his own country of safe and comfortable things and his little hobbit hole. He shivered. It was getting bitter cold up here, and the wind came shrill among the rocks. Boulders, too, at times came galloping down the mountainsides, let loose by midday sun upon the snow, and passed among them, which was lucky, or over their heads, which was alarming. The nights were comfortless and chill, and they did not dare sing or talk too loud, for the echoes were uncanny, and the silence seemed to dislike being broken, except by the noise of water, and the wail of wind, and the crack of stone. The summer is getting on down below, thought Bilbo, and haymaking is going on, and picnics. They will be harvesting and blackberrying before we even begin to go down the other side at this rate. And the others were thinking equally gloomy thoughts, although when they had said goodbye to Elrond and the high hope of a midsummer morning, they had spoken gaily of the passage of the mountains and of riding swift across the lands beyond. They had thought of coming to the secret door in the lonely mountain, perhaps the very next last noon of autumn. And perhaps it will be Durin's day, they had said. Only Gandalf had shaken his head and said nothing. Dwarves had not passed that way for many years, but Gandalf had, and he knew how evil and danger had grown and thriven in the wilds since the dragons had driven men from the lands, and the goblins had spread in secret after the Battle of the Mines of Moria. Even the good plans of wise wizards like Gandalf and of good friends like Elrond go astray sometimes when you are off on dangerous adventures over the edge of the wilds. And Gandalf was a wise enough wizard to know it. My nose itches again. This is not fun for me. Ugh. This is awful news. I hate when my nose itches. It's the most inconvenient thing ever. For anyone wondering, I'm drinking iced coffee. My first iced coffee of the day. I'm still sipping on it. It's crazy. He knew that something unexpected might happen, and he hardly dared to hope that they would pass without fearful adventure over those great tall mountains with lonely peaks and valleys where no king ruled. They did not. All was well until one day they met a thunderstorm. More than a thunderstorm, a thunder battle. You know how terrific a really big thunderstorm can be down in the land and in the river valley, especially at times when two great thunderstorms meet and clash. More terrible still are thunder and lightning in the mountains at night, when storms come up from the east and west and make war. The lightning splinters on the peaks and rocks shiver, and great crashes split the air and go rolling and tumbling into every cave and hollow, and the darkness is filled with overwhelming noise and sudden light. Bilbo had never seen or imagined anything of the kind. They were high up in a narrow place with a dreadful fall into a dim valley at one side of them. There, they were sheltering under a hanging rock for the night, and he lay beneath a blanket and shook from head to toe. When he peeped out in the lightning flashes, he saw that across the valley, the stone giants were out and were hurling rocks at one another for a game and catching them and tossing them down into the darkness, where they smashed among the trees far below or splintered into little bits with a bang. Then came a wind and a rain, and the wind whipped the rain and the hail about in every direction, so that an overhanging rock was no protection at all. Soon they were getting drenched, and their ponies were standing with their heads down and their tails between their legs, and some of them were whinnying with fright. They could hear the giants goofying and shouting all over the mountainsides. I don't know what that word is. I've never seen that word before. "This won't do at all," said Thorin. "If we don't get blown off, or drowned, or struck by lightning, we shall be picked up by some giant and kicked sky high for a football." "Well, if you know of anywhere better, take us there," said Gandalf, who was feeling very grumpy and was far from happy about the giants himself. The end of their argument was when they sent Fili and Kili to look for a better shelter. They had very sharp eyes, and being the youngest of the dwarves by some 50 years, they usually got these sort of jobs when everybody could see that it was absolutely no use sending Bilbo. Aw, poor Bilbo. "There is nothing like looking, if you want to find something," or so Thorin said to the young dwarves. You certainly usually find something if you look, but it is not always quite the something that you were after. So it proved on this occasion. Soon, Fili and Kili came crawling back, holding onto the rock in the wind. "We have found a dry cave," they said. "Not far round the next corner, and the ponies and all could get inside." "Have you thoroughly explored it?" said the wizard, who knew that the caves up the mountains were seldom unoccupied. "Yes, yes," they said, although everybody knew they could not have been long about it. They had come back too quick. "It isn't all that big, and it does not go far back. That, of course, is the dangerous part about caves. You don't know how far they go back sometimes, or where a passage behind may lead to, or what is waiting for you inside." But now Fili and Kili's news seemed good enough, so they all got up and prepared to move. The wind was howling and the thunder was still growing, and they had a business getting themselves and their ponies along. Still, it was not very far to go, and before long they had come to a rock standing out into the path. If you stepped behind, you found a low arch in the side of the mountain. There was just room to get the ponies through with a squeeze when they had been unpacked and unsaddled. As they passed under the arch, it was good to hear the wind and the rain outside instead of all about them, and to feel safe from the giants and their rocks. but the wizard was taking no risks. He lit up his wand, as he did that day in Bilbo's dining room that seemed so long ago, if you remember, and by its light they explored the cave from end to end. It seemed quite a fair size, but not too large and mysterious. It had a dry floor and some comfortable nooks. At one end there was a room for the ponies, and there they stood, mighty glad of the change, steaming and champing in their nose bags. Oin and Gloin wanted to light a fire at the door to dry their clothes, but Gandalf would not hear of it. So they spread out their wet things on the floor and got the dry ones out of their bundles when they made their blankets comfortable. They got out their pipes and blew smoke rings, which Gandalf turned into different colors and set dancing up by the roof to amuse them. They talked and forgot all about the storm and discussed what they would do with his share of the treasure when they got it, which at the moment did not seem so impossible. And so they dropped off to sleep one by one. And that was the last time they used the ponies, packages, baggages, tools, and paraphernalia that they had all brought with them. It turned out a good thing that night that they had brought little Bilbo with them after all, for somehow he could not go to sleep for a long while, and when he did sleep, he had very nasty dreams. He dreamed that a crack in the wall at the back of the cave got bigger and bigger and opened wider and wider, and he was very afraid that he could not call out or do anything but lie and look. Then he dreamed that the floor of the cave was giving away, and he was slipping, beginning to fall down, goodness knows where to. And at that, he woke up with a horrible start, and found that part of his dream was true. A crack had opened at the back of the cave and was already a wide passage. He was just in time to see the last of the ponies' tails disappearing into it. Of course, he gave a very loud yell, as loud as a yell as a hobbit can give, which was surprising for their size. Out that jumped the goblins, big goblins, great ugly-looking goblins, lots of goblins, before you could say rocks and blocks. There were 6 to each dwarf, at least, and 2 even for Bilbo. So 6 to each dwarf, and there are 13 dwarves. Holy shit. They prepared a small militia. Where was I? There were 6 to each dwarf at least, and 2 even for Bilbo, and they were all grabbed and carried through the crack before you could say tinder and flint. But not Gandalf. Bilbo's yell had done that much good. It had wakened him up wide in a splintered second, and when the goblins came to grab him, there was a terrific flash like lightning in the cave, a smell like gunpowder, and several of them fell dead. The crack closed with a snap, and Bilbo and the dwarves were on the wrong side of it. Where was Gandalf? Of that, neither they nor the goblins had any idea, and the goblins did not wait to find out. They seized Bilbo and the dwarves and hurried them along. It was deep, dark, such as lonely goblins that have taken to living in the heart of mountains can see through. The passages there were crossed and tangled in all directions, but the goblins knew their way as well as you do in the nearest post office, and they went down and down, and it was most horribly stuffy. The goblins were very rough and pinched unmercifully, and chuckled and laughed in their horrible stony voices, and Bilbo was more unhappy even than when the troll had picked him up by his toes. He wished again and again for his nice bright hobbit hole, not for the last time. Now there came a glimmer of red light before them. The goblins began to sing or croak, keeping time with the flap of their feet on the stone and shaking their prisoners as well. Oh, my nose itches so much. It's because my nose ring is vibrating while I'm speaking. It's awful. My voice apparently has just enough fucking grit to it today that it's making my nose ring move and making my nose itch. This is awful. Oh. Oh no. Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm so smart. I forgot to put the bookmark in the page before I went to itch my nose. So this is the song the goblins are singing. Clap, snap, the black crack. Grip, grab, pinch, nab. And down, down to Goblin Town you go, my lad. Clash, crash, crush, smash, hammer and tongs, knocker and gongs, pound, pound, far underground, ho ho, my lad. Swish, smack, whip, crack, batter and beat, yammer and bleat, work, work, no dare to shirk, while goblins quaff and goblins laugh, round and round, far underground, below, my lad. It sounded truly terrifying. The walls echoed to the clap snap, and the crush smash, and to the ugly laughter of their ho ho, my lad. The general meaning of the song was only too plain. For now the goblins took out whips and whipped them with a swish, smack, and set them running as fast as they could in front of them. And more than one of the dwarves were already yammering and bleeding like anything when they stumbled into a big cavern. It was lit by a great red fire in the middle and by torches along the walls, and it was full of goblins. They laughed and stamped and clapped their hands when the dwarves, with poor little Bilbo at the back and nearest to the whips, came running in, while the goblin drivers whooped and cracked their whips behind. The ponies were already there, huddled in a corner, and there were all the baggages and packages lying broken open and being rummaged by goblins and smelt by goblins and fingered by goblins and quarreled over by goblins. I am afraid that was the last they ever saw of those excellent little ponies, including a jolly sturdy little white fellow that Elrond had lent to Gandalf, since his horse was not suitable for the mountain paths. For goblins eat horses and ponies and donkeys and other much more dreadful things, and they were always hungry. Just now, however, the prisoners were thinking only of themselves. The goblins chained their hands behind their backs and linked them all together in a line, and dragged them to the far end of the cavern with little Bilbo tugging at the end of the row. There in the shadows, on a large flat stone, saw a tremendous goblin with a huge head, and armed goblins were standing round him, carrying the axes and bent swords that they use. Now goblins are cruel, wicked, and bad-hearted. They make no beautiful things, but they make many clever ones. They can tunnel and mine as well as any, but the most skilled dwarves, when they take the trouble, though they are usually untidy and dirty. They can tunnel and mine as well as any but the most skilled dwarves. So the dwarves are still better than them, is what I'm hearing. My nose! This is a crime against me specifically. Am I gonna have to start taking my nose ring out when I do book club? This is awful. My fucking septum, man. Now, where was I? They can tunnel and mine as well as any but the most skilled dwarves. When they take the trouble, though, they are usually untidy and dirty. Hammers, axes, sword, daggers, pickaxes, tongs, and also instruments of torture they make very well, or get other people to make to their design. Prisoners and slaves that they have to work till they die for want of air and light. It is not unlikely that they invented some of the machines that have since troubled the world, especially the ingenious devices for killing large numbers of people at once, for wheels and engines and explosions always delighted them, and also not working with their own hands more than they could help. But in those days, in those wild parts that had not advanced, as it is called, so far, they did not hate dwarves especially, no more than they hated everybody and everything, and particularly the orderly and prosperous. In some parts, wicked dwarves had even made alliances with them. But they had a very special grudge against Thorin's people because of the war which you have heard mentioned, but which did not come into this tale. And anyway, goblins don't care who they catch, as long as it is done smart and secret, and the prisoners are not able to defend themselves. "Who are these miserable persons?" said the great goblin. "Dwarves, and this," said one of the drivers, pulling at Bilbo's chain so that he fell forward onto his knees. "We found them sheltering in our front porch." "What do you mean by it?" said the great goblin, turning to Thorin. "Up to no good, I'll warrant." "Spying on the private business of my people, I guess. Thieves, and I shouldn't be surprised to learn. Murderers and friends of elves, not unlikely. Come, what have you got to say?" "Thorin the dwarf at your service," he replied. "It was merely a polite nothing. Of the things which you suspect and imagine, we had no idea at all. We sheltered from a storm in what seemed a convenient cave and unused. Nothing was further from our thoughts than inconveniencing goblins in any way whatever." That was true enough. Said the great goblin. "So you say." That is the sassiest way to start a sentence. With an exclamation point at the end. Bitch! This ugly ass goblin's umming me. "So you might say, may I ask what you were doing up in the mountains and all, and where I should like to know all about you. Not that it will do you much good, Thorin Oakenshield. I know too much about your folk already, but let's have the truth, or I will prepare something particularly uncomfortable for you." "We were on a journey to visit our relatives, our nephews and nieces and first, second, and third cousins, and the other descendants of our grandfathers who live on the east side of these truly hospitable mountains," said Thorin, not quite knowing what to say all at once in the moment, when obviously the exact truth would not do at all. Hello. Sorry. Vocal stim. "He is a liar, oh, truly tremendous one," said one of the drivers. "Several of our people were struck by lightning in the cave when we invited these creatures to come below, and they are as dead as stones. And he has not explained this." He held out the sword which Thorin had worn, the sword which had came from the troll's lair. The great goblin gave a truly awful howl of rage when he looked at it. And all of his soldiers gnashed their teeth, clashed their shields, and stamped. They knew the sword at once. It had killed hundreds of goblins in its time, when the fair elves of Gondolin hunted them in the hills or did battle before their walls. They called it Orcrist, Goblin Cleaver, but the goblins called it simply Biter. They hated it, and hated worse anyone who carried it. "Murderers and elves' friends," the great goblin shouted. "Slash them, beat them, bite them, gnash them, take them away to dark holes full of snakes, and never let them see the light again." He was in such a rage that he jumped off of his seat and himself rushed at Thorin with his mouth open. Just at that moment, all the lights of the cavern went out, and the great fire went poof into a tower of blue glowing smoke, right up into the roof, that scattered piercing white sparks all among the goblins. The yells and yammering, croaking, gibbering, and jabbering, howls, growls, and curses, shrieking and shrieking that followed were beyond description. Several hundred wild cats and wolves began being roasted slowly alive together would not have compared with it. The sparks were burning holes in the goblins, and the smoke that now fell from the roof made the air too thick for even their eyes to see through. Soon they were falling over one another and rolling in heaps on the floor, biting and kicking and fighting as if they had all gone mad. Suddenly a sword flashed in its own light. Bilbo saw it go right through the great goblin as he stood dumbfounded in the middle of his rage. He fell dead, and the goblin soldiers fled before the sword shrieking into the darkness. The sword went back into its sheath. "Follow me, quick," said a voice fierce and quiet, and before Bilbo understood what had happened, he was trotting along again, as fast as he could trot at the end of the line, down more dark passages with the yells of the goblin hall growing fainter behind him. A pale light was leading them on. "Quicker, quicker," said the voice. "The torches will soon be relit." "Half a minute," said Dory, who at the back, next to Bilbo, has said a decent fellow. He made the hobbit scramble on his shoulders as best as he could with his tied hands, and then off they all went at a run, with a clink of chains and many a stumble, since they had no hands to steady themselves with. Not for a long while did they stop, and by that time they must have been right down in the very mountain's heart. Then Gandalf lit up his wand. Of course it was Gandalf, but just then they were too busy to ask how he got there. He took out his sword again, and again it flashed in the dark by itself. It burned with a rage that made it gleam if goblins were about. Now it was bright as blue flame, for delight in the killing of the great lord of the cave. It made no trouble whatever of cutting through goblin chains and setting all the prisoners free as quickly as possible. This sword's name was Glamdring the Foe Hammer, if you remember. The goblins called it Beater, and hated it worse than Biter if possible. Orcrist too had been saved, for Gandalf had brought it along as well, snatching it from one of the terrified guards. Gandalf thought of most things, and my nose. And though he could not do everything, he could do a great deal for friends in a tight corner. "Are we all here?" said he, handing his sword back to Thorin with a bow. "Let me see. 1, that's Thorin. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Where are Feely and Keely? Here they are. 12, 13. And here's Mr. Baggins. 14. Well. It might be worse, and then again it might be good. It might be a good better. No ponies and no food and no knowing quite where we are, and hordes of angry goblins just behind. On we go." On they went. Gandalf was quite right. They began to hear goblin noises and horrible cries far beyond the passages they had come through. They sent them on faster than ever, and as poor Bilbo could not go half as fast, for dwarves can roll at a tremendous pace, I can tell you, when they have to, they took it in turn to carry him on their backs. Still, goblins go faster than dwarves, and these goblins knew the way better. They had made the paths themselves, and they were madly angry. So that do what they could, the dwarves heard the cries and howls getting closer and closer. Soon, they could even hear the flap of the goblin feet, many feet, which seemed only just round the last corner. The blink of red torches could be seen behind them in the tunnel. They were following, and they were getting deadly tired. "Why, oh why did I ever leave my hobbit hole?" said poor Mr. Baggins, bumping up and down on Bomber's back. "Why, oh why did I ever bring that wretched little hobbit on a treasure hunt?" said poor Bomber, who was fat and staggering along with the sweat dripping down his nose in his heat and terror. At this point, Gandalf fell behind, and Thorin with him. They turned a sharp corner. "About turn," he shouted. "Draw your sword, Thorin." There was nothing else to be done, and the goblins did not like it. They came scurrying round the corner in full cry, and found Goblin Cleaver and Foe Hammer shining cold and bright right in their astonished eyes. The ones in front dropped their torches and gave one yell before they were killed. The ones behind yelled still more and leaped back, knocking over those that were running after them. "Biter and Beater," they shrieked as soon as they were all in confusion, and most of them were hustling back the way they came. It was quite a long while before any of them dared to turn that corner. By that time, the dwarves had gone on again, a long way into the dark tunnels of the goblins' realm. When the goblins discovered that, they put their torches and slipped on soft shoes when they chose out their very quickest runners with the sharpest eyes and ears. These ran forward, as swift as weasels in the dark, and with hardly any more noise than bats. That is why neither Bilbo, nor the dwarves, nor even Gandalf heard them coming. Nor did they see them. But they were seen by the goblins that ran silently up behind, for Gandalf was letting his wand give out a faint light to help the dwarves as they went along. Quite suddenly, Dori, now at the back again carrying Bilbo, was grabbed from behind in the dark. He shouted and fell, and the hobbit rolled off his shoulders and into the blackness, bumped his head on a hard rock, and remembered nothing more. Bilbo has been separated from the party. Bilbo has been separated from the party! Travesty. Oh my goodness! Okay, now we're at an hour. I guess I just wasn't stumbling over my words as frequently this time. When reading chapter 2, I was struggling hard because I was reading quickly. Anyway, so next time we read, it will be chapter 5, which is Riddles in the Dark, I believe, is what it was called. Yes. So I will go ahead and update this for next time. However, you will not see it anymore. You will not see it anymore. And for today, that's kind of all I got for you guys. Oh, just quick. Yeah, chapter 5, Riddles in the Dark. That'll be the next one. And for now, I'm probably just gonna go ahead and sign off for the day. Because that's all the book club really is. Book club is just reading, and then if anybody has thoughts they want to share, or like how they're feeling about the book so far, you can share them and chat about them. For the time being though, because we're only just now finishing up with chapter 4, I think by the time we get to chapter 10, I will probably sit and we'll have a discussion about the story so far. And I will also do my best to... Maybe I'll record a video for YouTube reading the first 2 chapters again, so that way there's... I don't have the VODs for them. I don't know if I'd have the VOD for chapter 3 either. No, we read chapter 3 and 4. My bad. We read chapter 3 and 4 just now. Wow. Anyway, I might record a video for YouTube of me reading chapters 1 and 2. Just so that way it's there. And from there, I will see you guys tomorrow. I might be a little late to stream tomorrow, depending on how certain plans go. But I will see you guys tomorrow for the new Honkai Star Rail update that I've not done yet. Like, at all. I've not touched Honkai since we did it I've gotten on and logged on and done combat things, but I've not really played the game at all in a while. So for now, drink plenty of water, eat plenty of food, tell the people you love that you love them, and make sure to take extra good care of yourself. I will see you guys tomorrow. And for now, this will be a goodbye. I hate saying that. I've been watching so many Marvel movies recently that saying goodbyes are painful. I hate goodbyes now. I fucking hate goodbyes. See you later are more comforting. Anyway, yeah. See you later. Bye-bye.